Well, hi there. I am sucking on a Tic Tac, but aside from that, I'm Diana. I am Diana Montford. See? I am Diana Montford, world's first transgender television journalist. Born male, became female. I am now queen among kings. La-di-da. Okay. Let's talk about the joys of being a geriatric. Anyway, do you want to stay in your home or apartment when you're old, if you live long enough to get old and all that stuff? Well, have I got a show for you. We're going to talk about the Stonewall Community Development Corporation. I have no idea what that is, but my wonderful guests do. My guests are, the man in the green shirt is Mr. Paul Nagle, who is going to tell us whatever it is he's going to tell us, and the man in the jacket with the blue shirt is Mr. Tom Smith. Is that your real name? Anyway, sounds like a motel register to me, but okay.
Or a no-fly list.
Yeah. Yeah, that must be hard. It's usual.
Don't travel with them.
No. Anyway, we're going to talk about all these wonderful things that if you're old or hoping to be old, you'll need to know about. Am I right? I look like alfalfa. There's a hair sticking up there. Yes. Am I right?
Yes, alfalfa.
When am I wrong, Spanky? He's not wearing any trousers under the desk. He's really not. It's rude to point. Okay. So let's talk about this. The Stonewall Community Development Corporation. Housing for LGBTQ older adults in New York City. Survey results. So anyway, so what is this all about? She queried.
Well, last year we did the first LGBTQ survey on people 50 and above in New York City. It's the first time ever on their housing needs, their health needs, etc. And obviously the health needs have a lot to do with how long they're going to be staying in the community. And
by community, do you mean their communities of choice? Not necessarily the LGBTQ community, but their whatever community they live in.
The community of choice, but also we wanted to find out what percentage of people lived in adequate housing, substandard housing.
Isn't that mainly on the eye of the beholder, really?
No. It's HPD qualifications.
Oh, they have definite guidelines as to what is.
Yes, and under which I think about 70% of our respondents were in substandard housing, according to HPD
Well,
criteria.
welcome to the club. Well, what constitutes substandard housing?
Oh, there's a list of like 5 things, and I don't remember them
like
off
New
the
York
top of my
living,
head.
you know?
Well, yeah, it's lead paint. It's
most older buildings underneath the water-based paint have lead paint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So.
Plumbing problems, that kind of thing, vermin, all sorts of icky stuff.
Yeah, vermin is one of them.
Yeah.
We did this survey because there was absolutely no data at all about LGBT senior housing needs. There's really no data about LGBT senior housing or LGBT people.
Is there a reason for that?
Well, yeah, there is, because if you don't collect the data, then you don't have to have a policy for it.
Okay.
So, for example, the city has actually had a law on the books for 3 years now that all city agencies need to come up with a way to allow LGBT clients to self-identify.
As in their gender or whatever.
That I am
pronouns.
LGBT.
Oh, I see.
And so they were supposed to, by law, have their proposals for how they would do that to the city by December 31st of 2017, and not one city agency has complied yet.
We are shooting this on June whatever it is?
Yeah, June
22nd.
Of 2018.
And Trump administration, within 3 weeks of taking office, removed LGBT as a category from
the census, yes,
the National Senior Assessments, Senior Needs Assessment, which is what they base all of their funding decisions for senior programs on.
Can we do anything about this?
Well, hopefully at some point, yeah. They also removed us from the National Disabilities Assessment, so all the people with AIDS were removed from that, and we were removed from the census. So gathering data is a really important thing to do.
But what do we do with it if there's no money to help the LGBTQ community?
Well, you use it for advocacy to change that, but in the meantime, you use it to organize the community because there is money in the community.
Oh, money, private money.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So, and this has gone a long way to like putting us on the map because we've only been around for 4 years now. And now
You mean the
Stonewall
Stonewall Community
CDC.
Development Corporation?
Yeah, so now we're actually emerging as thought leaders in the field, which was kind of the idea of trying to do this. But it also has informed our next round of development because we're not ready to build yet. We're still amassing.
Are you building nursing homes? Is that it?
Not nursing homes. We're looking to build affordable apartments at different ranges, mid-market to low income. And to look at innovative solutions, and we're looking at co-housing, we're looking at apartment sharing.
What is co-housing?
Co-housing where people who have means would get together and develop something together. So
Like the Golden Girls?
yeah, basically, yeah. And we're looking at micro-design.
Like a tiny apartment, like a one-room, like the Japanese hotel rooms.
Well,
Yes.
what we're
Closer
looking
to-
at more is, say, there's a shared living room and 4 studio apartments around it, and shared kitchen. But each
Oh, yeah.
apartment has
Sort
its
of like
door into this common space, but also has a door to the outside,
Wonderful.
so that they
Does it have its own bathroom?
yes,
Oh,
so they can
wonderful.
be as social or unsocial as
So
they
it's
want to.
sort of like a hotel, a boutique hotel,
Yeah.
tiny hotel.
Yeah, not so tiny actually. So there are a lot of different ways to address this, but first you sort of have to educate the community that it's a problem.
And hopefully private money can provide not only the real estate, but the buildings for these projects. You know?
Yeah, I think as people learn what we're up against in terms of trying to do this, because a lot of cities are building LGBT-friendly senior housing, but they don't have the same restrictions with the lottery that we have, and you can't do set-asides.
What do you mean, the lottery?
So if you do affordable housing in New York City and you take subsidies from the city, you have to do a lottery. You have to take 1/3 people straight from the homeless shelters, and then everyone else is in a lottery, and it's first come, first served. So you have 80,000 people applying for 100 units, and there's no way to say we want the LGBT people to have the edge there.
But if we build LGBT housing that is exclusively LGBT housing, that is illegal.
Exactly so. And you don't really want to do that anyway. You know, I mean, I don't want
Well,
to.
there will be a de facto gay ghetto no matter what you do because people will move in together.
Well, you can guarantee that a building is culturally competent and geared towards the LGBT community.
And welcoming.
And welcoming. But you cannot guarantee that every single person will be LGBT.
You can't even guarantee a majority.
No,
Exactly.
because, well, and also even if someone has an apartment and their daughter comes and lives with them who might be straight
Exactly.
or whatever. Yeah.
Well, and that being said, there are 3 projects now trying to happen for low income LGBT folks. Sage is building a building in the Bronx, and they're building a building in Ingersoll houses in Brooklyn. And Penrose LLC and Habitat for Humanity in Riseborough are trying.
Where's Riseborough?
Riseborough's out of Brooklyn. It's a service provider.
Okay.
They're the partners in a project that's happening in Nolita. They won an RFP in District 1 to build
What is an RFP?
a request for proposals,
Okay.
from the city. So there are 3 housing complexes moving towards happening, but the lottery issue still hasn't been worked out.
Can we do away with the lottery?
I don't know
In
that
our particular case, because it might be more necessary for us to have more specialized housing than it would for most people.
that would be part of the policy change that we would be advocating for. There are groups that are called suspect class, which means they've been discriminated against.
Right, yes.
The government doesn't acknowledge in a policy way the discrimination against us, so it doesn't allow us to take steps to mitigate it.
Is that this particular Trump government,
No.
No.
or just the government in
Yeah,
general, the
yes.
U.S. government?
Yeah.
Right. And the state.
And the state. Yeah.
In spite of our current Governor Cuomo's apparent friendliness to the LGBTQ community.
This was not set up against us. This was, it's a small category which you have to be legislatively put into. So it wasn't that we were excluded, it's that we were never included. There is a difference. And so we would have to prove a history of discrimination and then
I
advocate.
think that's pretty easy, wouldn't you
Yeah.
say?
And then advocate that we be included.
And the income this makes it very difficult because, as we were discussing before we went on the air, it's possible to make too much, but it is also possible to make too little. So there has to be a certain median income that fits within the parameters set by the building or the government or
Well,
something.
it's called area median income, actually, and that's how they measure your qualification for affordable housing. So one of the things that we found during this survey, so we needed 500 people to answer the survey to have valid results, and we actually got 966.
Oh, wonderful.
So the results are very valid, and they're very disturbing.
Why?
Well, a quarter of the respondents have a psychiatric diagnosis.
Is that, now, there are many reasons for that. One, it could be because they've been so abused because they're LGBTQ. Two, it could be that they are gender dysphoric, and that qualifies as a psychiatric diagnosis when in fact it's really not, you know? But and third, it's very difficult for example, trans people to make a livable wage. And if they are offered some kind of disability and have to sign on the dotted line and say that they're insane, often they will,
Right.
because it's the only way to survive. You know?
72% of those surveyed had one or more major illnesses.
Physical as opposed to mental illness.
Physical versus mental illness.
see.
In both physical illness and mental illness, we outstrip the general aging population.
Including
in terms of
racial minorities and other...
Well, if you look at the entire population, if you break down, and we do in this, if you break down to racial, the problems, whatever the problem is, it's like double. And if you break down to trans, it's like quadruple.
Yeah.
Whatever the problem, whether it's poverty or,
Sure,
you know.
absolutely.
And so one of the other things that we found from this was 78% of the respondents had a 4-year college degree or higher, which is very high.
But have a very difficult time finding employment.
Well, so
and keeping it.
50% of those...
I once lost a job when they found out I was trans.
Exactly. 50% of those people are under 50% AMI, which is very low income, and 25% of them were under 30% AMI, which is very, very low income. So you have a...
What is very, very low income as it's defined today in New York?
Well, it's relative to where you live and what other people in your area are making. That's why it's called area median
In
income.
most places I would be middle income, but I live on the Upper East Side, so I'm destitute by those standards.
Right, exactly. Well, that is part of what goes
Because
into
they
it.
take into consideration your rent and the cost of food and everything else in that area.
Yeah, sure.
So-
And things are much more... A club sandwich where I live costs $20. In another borough costs like $9,
Right.
you know?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So one of the things we're looking at is not only how these results are troubling, but how they could be advantageous. So in terms
How
of
could they be advantageous?
in terms of developing with a commercial developer, if you have a highly educated, low-income population, that's very attractive. Because if they're trying to do mixed income, then they know that the people that they can put people in there who are smart but poor. You see what
There
I'm
are those
saying?
who would say, well, if you're so smart, why are you poor?
Well, but the fact is that you are.
Yeah.
So from a developer's point of view and mixed income point of view, you could have poor people and wealthier people who would get along because they have the same educational attainment.
I see. Not unlike Peter Stuyvesant Village or something.
And also because they have in this survey and generally
Now,
expressed...
someone might say, well, that's very classist, in the sense that if you're an inner city minority person and you quit school, let's say 13, and no truant officer came for you because you were a minority person in the inner city with no income.
Well, no one would screen someone out because they didn't have a college degree. The thing is that we have a much higher percentage of college graduates and people with advanced degrees than other poor folk do. Exactly. So it does make us attractive for mixed income because
we classy poor folk.
Yeah, exactly so.
Bingo.
Well, exactly
Exactly.
so. And the garden will look really nice.
Yes. And we make great curtains. And we can do hair.
So we're not in a position to build right now, although I think that's not going to be far
Are you
off.
Can you get donations? Are you looking for donations?
Well, we will always accept donations, and I think the runner is going to have our website in it, and you can always go there and donate.
which is Stonewall Community Development Corporation.org.
No, it's stonewallcdc.org.
StonewallCDC.org. Okay. So if you have any cash and you want to help LGBTQ oldsters, send it.
Well, so what we're doing with the information we found.
But old, now what is old? Let's define old, because old is very elastic.
The survey started from 50 upwards.
Now that would have been old in 1922, but 50 today is sort of like 35-ish then, you know?
No, I understand, but the survey
Survey says.
started at the age of 50. The affordable housing on average starts at 60, 62, depending upon...
For senior housing, yeah.
Yeah, for senior housing. Usually starts 60, 62, depending upon, who's developing, etc.
Most people of 60 or 62 are quite productive and still firmly entrenched in their work life.
And still aren't thinking about what's going to happen when they get older. So that's part of the point.
But is it possible that in today's world, older will be truly redefined medically, and older as we knew it, say, 100 years ago, will no longer exist?
I would say you should be thinking about it when you're 50, and we
Right.
don't. Especially in the gay community. We're very averse to aging issues.
Yes, like starlets were terrible that
Right.
way.
So part of it is to get people to think about it, and part of it is to get them engaged in the community organizing and public advocacy to help their elders now.
The average Social Security check is $1,300 a month. Okay? Most people retire without a pension.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So they're
and no
living
savings. I love when they say, well, you should have 6 months of income
Yes.
in case something Excuse me. What?
So most
Yeah, you should.
so
Sounds good to me.
more people than you might think retire on that $1,300
Sure.
a month. And how do you
And
live in
it's-
New York City on 13?
Well, there is the SCREE program where your
Right.
rent is frozen if you are 62 or older
Mm-hmm.
and of low income. You sign up for that. And as you know, I do a lot of work with trans people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you something else. I once called trans woman who'd worked for the phone company all her life. I'm not going to mention her name. She was 60-something, and she was about to be evicted. I called her city council member in Harlem, dropped dead. Inez Dickens, thanks Inez. A lot of people told me just screw off. I don't care. Don't bother me. For this poor lady. Finally, I called Letitia James, the public advocate. I love her. They listened. I gave them this lady's contact information. This woman called me crying. They saved her. I'm not at liberty to say what they did for her because I'm not exactly sure, but they did wonderful stuff. Letitia James, public advocate of New York City. This was about a year ago. You know? So, I mean, there are ways around.
There are ways to try to preserve as much
By the way,
assets as
because
you
this
can.
woman was trans,
Right.
she was done out of her pension by the telephone company
Right.
because they contrived evidence that this woman who used to install telephones in people's homes had insulted a customer, which she had not. She swore.
Yeah, so and part of the problem is that if
That
someone
was transphobia on their part.
has gone into isolation, they're going to be going through this alone. So
And many are because they live in straight communities
Right,
and do
right.
not have
Right.
LGBTQ friends.
So where we're taking the information from this is to a website platform that's an interactive community.
Which is?
It's going to be called Stonewall Village NYC. It doesn't actually exist yet. We're launching it the third week in July, and we're actually looking for people 50 and over to beta test it with us.
What is beta test?
That means try it out, see what you like, tell us what you think is missing, what's not working
As
for
you know, because of this show, and you know from your own life as a medical professional, we are go-to people for our respective communities, the gay male community, the trans community, for people who need help. And as you also know, many in our communities need help.
Yep.
We're hoping that with the platform that people will discover programs such as SCREE, etc. They will also...
You would be shocked at how many people do not know about these
Not
things.
at all.
Exactly. And that's why...
And it comes as a huge revelation to
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
And that by people working on the working with the platform, that they'll be able to find people who have common interests, be able to say, go to a museum or something.
Sure.
You know, every museum
Whatever.
has a free night and things like that. So that's low cost because all you'd have to do is get there. And we're going.
And I think they also actually have, for seniors, a free, you can get in for free. not publicized, but
Right.
you call them ahead of
Right.
time.
And we're going to have someone focus in on cultural events and activities and so forth. So those people who are interested in those type of things will be able to find those things on the website.
Not every senior is a culture maven. Some people like R&B and getting drunk on cheap beer. There has to be something for those people.
And
as
sports too.
well. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's self-directed. So part of there's the tagline at the top is "Welcome to Stonewall Village NYC. How can you help you?"
Mm-hmm.
So there's 3 different buckets. There's affordable housing, products and services, and culture and connection. Affordable housing, they can find out not only what's available, but how to, for free, how to prepare their documents for a successful affordable housing application.
Or get someone to help them prepare them.
That's what
Yes.
we would do. And,
Yes.
and one of the things that came out of this is that we embedded subsidy programs for 8 different city and federal programs. And almost everyone in the survey qualified for one of those subsidies, but only about 50% could prove it with documents.
Well, years ago I used to volunteer at the center, the name change clinic, because I'm half Spanish, I speak Spanish,
Right.
and some people did not speak English. And I also used to have to go to court to interpret via Niagara, you remember Niagara,
Right.
for trans folk who did not speak English, you know? So, I mean, you also have to have translators to help people who do not speak English, and today that doesn't necessarily mean Spanish. It can mean Mandarin, Cantonese, anything, Russian, you know?
Yeah, we're bringing on 8 interns to help.
Multilingual, I hope.
Yes, and they're multilingual, multiracial, and 40% of them were gender nonconforming.
That's wonderful. Are they over 50?
No, they're young. They're 18 to 24 because
Why not find over 50 need more work than the 18 to 24?
Well, their job, the reason they're 18 to 24 is because we're partnering with the Brooklyn Community Pride Center's Pride Path. So we're choosing them. They're being hired by Pride Path. They send them back to us with computers and pay them $13 an hour for 16 hours a week for 8 weeks.
I know a lot of seniors who would be damn glad to make $13 an hour.
Absolutely. So, but that's the program they've created. One of the things that we're trying to do with this is in the culture and connection to have an ongoing education called New Occupations where people can learn to take different positions in this virtual community.
And also as whatever they did grows obsolete because of computers and everything, they can learn new skills.
Yep. So
is it possible to have a working life forever? Assuming you die at 110, can you continue working, do you think, forever?
You know, it really depends upon capacity and physical health and energy. But I'll start with capacity because a lot of people might live until they're 90, but how many people have mental or physical capacity beyond the age of 80 or so?
But we all know many who do.
We know many who do, but we also know many who don't. We know people in their 60s who've started Alzheimer's.
Isn't that a shame?
It's very a shame, but everyone ages at a different rate. And so for those who have the capacity, that's wonderful. And yes, I think it's a great goal. For those without capacity, I think, or diminished capacity, I think that by being in a network that could support people to help people stay in their home for the rest of their life is really, really important.
Yes.
And that's our long-term goal, is to make sure that people...
This has replaced the old-time nursing home.
Well,
it's an aging in place strategy. It's meant to help people stay where they are. So, and it's based on a model called the Village Network. We're a member of that. There's like 200 of them across the country. So this isn't a new idea. We are the first LGBTQ specific one. Which
is shocking at this point.
Most of the other ones also charge $500 to $700
during the first
a
quarter
year membership.
of the 21st century that it's taken this long.
Yep, and most of the other ones charge $500 to $700 a year membership.
Well, that's the whole thing. If you are very rich, you will find senior housing that suits you to a T. If you are not, and this housing is for most of us who are not.
Right. So part of...
Am I right?
Yes, and this is New York City. So you have to accept everyone of their age, their capacity, their ability to pay, etc.
Well, and as the city's real estate prices zoom into the stratosphere, most people, as I've told you, many do not have a clue about freezing the rent via SCREE or other housing subsidies. You have to explain it in detail and then get a city council member to also explain it to them, and it comes as a total revelation.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
And these are intelligent people. They're not stupid, and they're not unworldly, but they just don't realize.
There are many programs out there that people aren't aware of, but we're hoping that we can get those resources and place them onto this website, which
Wonderful.
we're also hoping will be handheld, with a smartphone
Yes.
app.
It actually is going to work on people's smart TVs. So there's telemedicine, there's telewellness. So
Wonderful.
we'll be doing dance classes
Yeah, sure,
online,
whatever.
and people can do it in their own living room with no one watching them,
Yes.
or they can put themselves up on screen and let people watch them doing it with everybody
Not
else.
unlike this show. Yes. Okay. So, now, how do people contact you? And what's the name of your organization?
It's Stonewall Community Development Corporation, and the website is stonewallcdc.org. And we are looking for senior folks to play with us and try out this website. We hope eventually that everyone in the city knows about this, and that it becomes not only a tool to help people stay in their homes, but also to organize and educate and organize the community to be able to push for some of the policy change that will alleviate some of this pain that we're seeing.
And don't forget, we boomers, baby boomers, are next to them. I believe the millennials and the boomers are the two largest generations ever, which is very strange. What happened in the middle? Huh? Anyway, my guests have been Mr. Paul Nagle and Mr. Tom Smith, who are here to talk about the Stonewall Community Development Corporation. I strongly urge you to contact them if you are mature, or if you know someone who is mature. That's a nice way of saying old.
Or you're interested in helping friends who are mature.
Yes, or if you plan or hope to be old. I mean, it's always good to have all your ducks in a row, geriatric and rheumatoid though they may be. Okay, so anyway, I'm Diana Montford, forever young, younger than springtime, the age of Adeline. But anyway, and we are here talking about wonderful stuff. And if I were you, I would contact these nice people, because you never know. One day when you least expect it, you're old.
That's the truth.
Yeah. Would I lie? Anyway, love you a lot. See you next time.